You ever wake up and realize your whole life's just been sold out from under you? Like you blink and bam, it's gone. That's what happened to me sitting half a world away when Elena's voice broke through on the satellite call, just barely holding it together, telling me, "Mark, they sold it. They sold our land." Her face on the screen was pale eyes, red from too many nights without sleep, and right behind her on my granddad's barn, a big orange foreclosure notice, like a slap in the face. At first I thought maybe I misheard. Sold? What do you mean, sold? My voice went low, steady, same voice I used in combat back when you had to sound calm while everything inside was screaming. She swallowed hard. The HOA foreclosed. They put our 10 acres up for auction while you were deployed. Noon-sharp gavel fell, paperwork filed. It's done. And man, let me tell you, I've faced ambushes, IEDs, all kinds of hell, but nothing ever hit like hearing that my family's land had been stolen while I was out serving this country. You want to know the worst part? There's laughter in the background of that video she sent. Woman's laughter. Sharp and smug Karen Cromwell, HOA president of Willowbrook. To most folks, Karen's all pearls and charm baskets of muffins, that soft smile at Sunday socials. But to us, she's a shark in designer shoes. She'd stood right there in my driveway, waving that foreclosure deed around like a trophy, saying, "This neighborhood deserves a better owner. Someone who pays their dues. Someone fit for Willowbrook." Like I was some kind of criminal just for being away fighting for people I didn't even know. Yeah, that happened. I was halfway across the world, boots in the sand, and back home Karen was gutting everything I loved. You want to know what sticks with me? The red barn, the mesquite pit where my granddad cooked Sunday suppers, the Texas sky over the pond, where Elena and I carved our initials on a cedar post. That wasn't just real estate, that was bloodline. But Karen, she sold it off like a used truck. That was the day I learned sometimes the meanest weapons don't carry rifles. Sometimes they wear pearls and carry bylaws. My name's Mark Thomas, but most folks just call me Tank. In the Army, I took hits and kept going. I thought I was done fighting, but back home I found out the war was just getting started. See, Karen Cromwell, she had a pattern. Military families, people deployed overseas, she'd bury them in fake fines, time foreclosure notices so nobody saw them till it was too late. Her board, a bunch of hand-picked cronies, voted in lockstep while she stripped people of their homes. But she miscalculated with me. She thought deployment made me weak, thought my wife would break. She was dead wrong. That orange foreclosure notice that was the spark. The moment this turned from a one-sided beating into a fight. Because if there's one thing you learn in the military, it's never corner a soldier and his family unless you're ready for the counterattack. Let me back up a sec. When I was a kid, the world smelled like sawdust leather and mesquite smoke that all came from my granddad's barn. That wasn't just a building. It was a story written in wood boards, darkened by Texas summers, the saddle rack still holding the shape of my grandfather's boots. He was a surveyor by trade, a soldier by duty, fought in Korea, came home and poured his life into that 10-acre patch outside Austin. Land's on a son. People aren't. Always own what they can't see, he'd say. Back then I didn't get it. I just liked following him around with a hammer. Slick developers came sniffing around in the 80s wanting to buy him out, make a subdivision called Willowbrook. Granddad sold some outer acreage, just enough for their dream neighborhood. But he kept the 10-acre heart, the barn, the pond, and here's the kicker, every mineral right, oil, gas, and water, all written in his own careful script on the deed. They laughed at him. To them, he was just an old farmer, but he knew water would matter more than any pool or lawn someday. He passed away fixing fence posts, heart just gave out. I stood by his grave and promised I'd keep that land safe. When the Army called me back overseas, Elena became the guardian. She watered the mesquites, patched the barn roof, stood up to Karen Cromwell's poisoned words. Every letter from the HOA was like a bullet. Every fine another squeeze of the trigger. They called the pond a hazard, fined us for the barn door color, a color it had worn for 60 years. But Elena didn't break. She faced them head on with receipts, photos, county records, but Karen's crew just laughed, waving her off. It wasn't about paint or grass. It was about legacy bloodline. So when Karen Cromwell sold our land while I was under fire overseas, she wasn't just stealing dirt. She was trying to erase my grandfather. There's one thing you never do in Texas. You don't spit on a soldier's grave. If you do, his grandson will rise up and defend it. HOAs on paper are about keeping things neat. In the wrong hands, they're weapons. Karen started with letters, then fines for unapproved fencing fence older than the HOA itself. When they fined us for the barn door, I almost lost it. 60 years of sun and storms hadn't changed that door, but Karen's rules did. Every week a new letter, $50 here, $100 there, grass too long, grass too green, tools in the wrong place. Death by paperwork. Elena dressed up, brought proof, and Karen just smiled and said, motion to uphold the fines. Binder might as well have been invisible. Here's where it gets dirty. Karen targeted military families. The Service Member Civil Relief Act is supposed to protect us. But Karen saw it as a loophole. She'd pile fines on deployed families, send notices to empty mailboxes, start foreclosure once fees matured. By the time a soldier came home, the house was gone. Ours wasn't the first. I found out later a Marine lost his home while in Afghanistan. An Air Force tech came back to find his condo auctioned off, always for the good of the community. But this time, she picked the wrong mark. Our fine's $847, not a fortune, but enough for them to push a trustee sale while I was overseas. They sold the property to Cromwell Holdings, her shell company. But what Karen didn't know was my grandfather had prepped for vultures like her mineral rights water, the foundation of Willowbrook. And she'd just picked a fight she couldn't win. The afternoon rain was coming in, Texas sky bruised purple. Elena set up the laptop on my granddad's desk, called up Daniel Miller, an investigator with the Texas AG's office. Mr. Thomas, he said, your wife alleges Karen Cromwell initiated foreclosure while you were on active duty. I stayed calm. Yes, sir. Fines for grass that was too green, fence older than the HOA, all mailed while I was deployed. They buried my wife in paperwork, then pushed the property to a trustee sale. Miller listened, rubbed his face, shook his head. The Service Member Civil Relief Act is supposed to protect families like yours. But proving intent, we need a smoking gun. I said we might have one. My granddad kept mineral rights oil gas water. Everything under Willowbrook, that's ours. Miller looked wide awake for the first time. You own the subsurface rights? I nodded. Every drop under their lawns, every gallon in their pool, Elena added. We've got other families who were targeted while deployed. Karen exploits the law, twists it to push them out. Miller tapped his pen. If you can show intent, you bring it to me. Just then the storm cracked, power flickered, and right then a shadow crossed the door. The barn door flew in. Karen Cromwell herself, two muscle-bound goons behind her. HOA compliance stitched on their shirts. She filled the room like a thundercloud. Pearl's gleaming hair, pulled tight, eyes cold as a snake. Well, well, she purred, I heard you were back. Mark, spreading lies already. Her enforcers crossed their arms, blocking the exit. Karen, I said calm as I could manage, you just kicked in my door in front of a state official. That's trespassing. For a second, her mask slipped. This isn't trespassing. This is a compliance inspection. Her guys rifled through my tools, kicking stuff, trying to rattle us. I didn't flinch. Elena's hand was steady on my arm. She was a soldier's wife. She knew the drill. Suddenly, two deputies burst in, called by Karen. He attacked us, she shouted. One cop hesitated, but Elena, bless her, had her phone rolling. On camera, Karen heel smashing in our door. Deputies watched it twice. Ma'am, he didn't assault anyone. You forced entry. Cuffs came off me and Karen's smile just about cracked in half. This isn't over, she hissed. Then blackout. Lights, laptop cell, everything dead, Karen grinned. Technical difficulties, Mark. Don't worry, we're just here to help. But my granddad always said, never mistake a quiet man for a weak man. Out back, the generator kicked on. Lights flickered back and Karen's men looked rattled. But the real twist, Elena stepped forward with our rugged tablet live drone feed thermal imaging over Willowbrook. Karen's face went pale. "Last chance, Karen. Take your muscle and walk away." She snapped at her men to inspect the property, but outside, our neighbor Freddie, retired radio DJ, broadcast everything over ham radio. Karen's guys tried planting evidence in Elena's truck, but our truck's custom military-grade pepper fog went off in their faces, caught live on drone cam neighbors listening in. Karen's power was breaking. But then the real chaos. A car stuck at the flooded crossing, David Chin, her own treasurer. I dove into the current to save him, Colonel Jerry on the rope. When we hauled Chin out soaked and shaking, he pressed a zip drive into my hand. "The real ledger, please," he whispered. Back in the barn, Elena cracked open that zip spreadsheets, dirty secrets, kickbacks, evidence, planting, the whole playbook. Even forged liens filed days after my granddad's funeral. This wasn't just a smoking gun, it was the whole arsenal. That was what Miller needed. We packaged everything: deeds, mineral rights, survey mistakes that showed the HOA's prized pool and gatehouse were actually on our sliver of land. Operation Homestead. The next dawn, black SUVs rolled in marshals, sheriffs, state investigators. Karen tried to make a break for it, but buried her SUV in the mud. They dragged her out, pearls askew, mascara running right in front of everyone. And you know what? I didn't gloat. I just let her see me standing unbroken. Neighbors let out a long, quiet cheer. The reign of Karen Cromwell was over. The aftermath: court hearings, media storms. Karen's empire crumbled. Board members quit. David Chin testified, devastating. Karen took a plea, 15 years, no parole for 10. Judge read the sentence, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. Willowbrook had to heal. We held the new board meeting out on my lawn, not the fancy gatehouse now locked up by the county. Colonel Jerry became president. I took vice president with Elena at my side. We rewrote the bylaws, kicked out the petty rules, brought in transparency and term limits. The barn, once our fortress, became the neighborhood hub. Veterans, kids, families, everyone was welcome. We ran classes, cookouts, radio nights. The barn felt alive again. One night, sitting on that porch, Elena's hand in mine, I looked at the land and thought of my grandfather. Maybe he was right, land is honest. People have to learn to be. And I realized Karen never understood what real power was. She thought it was bylaws and control. But it's legacy, trust, community, the stuff you can't see. A little boy handed me a drawing, our barn kids playing flags, waving. At the bottom in crooked letters he'd written home. And that's what this fight was for. Not just for land, but so that every neighbor here could call this place home without fear. So would I do it all again in a heartbeat? Because some battles find you, and when they do, you either stand your ground or you lose everything worth living for. We stood our ground and we won. Now tell me, what does justice look like where you live? Drop your story below, share your thoughts. Because the only thing stronger than a bully's binder is a community that stands together.